Hello everyone. I made it back for part 2 of the homeless series, with the subtopic being the LGBTQIA community that is homeless. I'm going to pick up where I left off from the last video that I did. And this part, it's about supporting transgender and gender non-conforming youth participants when they go to shelters or seek services like food stamps and, medical, or even to apply for a school or a housing program or anything like that. So, for those that don't know, gender nonconforming is usually non-binary people, so they can either identify as both genders or as no gender at all. Transgender youth have needs that are distinct from those of LGBT youth. For example, they may need transition-related health care or help getting a state identification that includes their chosen name and has the appropriate gender marker. In addition, because most shelter and other congregate care living programs are segregated by gender, facility staff are often unsure how to classify transgender youth and may simply classify them based on their birth gender, without realizing that this negatively affects the youth's physical and emotional safety. In order to serve transgender youth competently and keep them safe, all employees and volunteers at agencies that serve homeless youth should understand what it means for a youth to be transgender, recognize that transgender youth will have diverse experiences and ways of talking about their self-identity, use transgender-related terms appropriately, avoid assumptions about the sexual orientation of transgender young people, understand that a person's sexual orientation relates to who someone is attracted to, and a person's gender identity relates to how the person understands his or her or their own gender. Transgender youth can be heterosexual, gay, lesbian, or bisexual. Allow transgender youth to express their gender identity through their chosen attire, hairstyle, and mannerisms while using agency services. Call transgender youth by the names and pronouns they prefer. It is always okay to politely ask a youth which pronouns he, she, or they prefer if the youth does not volunteer this information. An example would be, do you prefer if people refer to you using female pronouns, she and her, or male pronouns, he and him? You can also add in they and them. Have general knowledge about gender identity disorder and the WPATH recognized standard for diagnosing and treating youth and adults with GID. For agencies providing medical and mental health services to homeless youth, ensure that transgender youth have access to providers who are competent to provide counseling, hormone therapy, and other medical treatment in line with professional WPATH standards, and can provide transgender youth with individualized medical and psychological assessments. Ensure transgender youth receive or are able to access all transition-related treatment recommended by the healthcare provider's assessment. Take appropriate steps to advocate on behalf of the transgender youth participants if they are not safe on the streets or in school. Locate resources and programs that can assist transgender youth participants with their unique legal issues, such as getting their names changed and obtaining legal identifying documents, such as birth certificate, state ID cards, driver's license, etc., that reflect the gender with which they identify. Identify resources and programs that provide transgender-specific services, including counseling and groups where transgender youth can get support, meet other transgender youth, and learn more about themselves. And agencies that provide long-term housing support, such as transitional living programs, should ensure meaningful opportunities for education, job training, and employment that help transgender youth successfully transition to independent adulthood. Now, the next section is inform LGBT youth participants about local LGBT programs and services. LGBT youth may be hesitant to access social services and other programs because they are afraid that these services will not be LGBT friendly. Unfortunately, their reluctance is often based on past negative experiences. Helping homeless LGBT youth access the range of services they need means connecting them to resources they can count on as being LGBT friendly. Agencies that serve homeless youth should do the following. Help LGBT youth participants access LGBT community services and supportive adult mentors. Develop and regularly update lists of resources in the community, including services directed to the LGBT community. Distribute them to everyone in the agency, including to youth who may wish to access community resources privately. A community resource guide should include options for LGBT-friendly long-term housing, information about local LGBT community centers, locations of LGBT-friendly medical and mental health professional services, and information about laws that protect LGBT people in that jurisdiction. Contact information for LGBT civil rights organizations, locations of recreation centers safe for LGBT youth participants, employment resources and opportunities helpful to LGBT youth participants. Ensure that staff provides LGBT youth participants with information about any agency service available to address individual, family, and health issues around sexual orientation and or gender identity once the youth discloses to the agency staff that he or she is LGBT. Talk to youth one-on-one about resources that might be helpful for meeting specific needs, and encourage agency and program staff to visit other community resources and agencies to experience what will happen when the youth visits this site. Now, improving organizational culture. Recommendations for administrators and supervisors. And this can be administration or supervisors over any program that will be dealing with the community. Decisions made by agency administrators about hiring, policy, adoption, and implementation, training, volunteer recruitment, and other areas significantly affect the day-to-day functioning of the agencies and the experiences of all the youth. Administrators' consistent communication that creating an LGBT-friendly and competent agency is a priority can jumpstart the injection momentum into the process of improving agency performance. Directors, managers, and supervisors must demonstrate knowledge on LGBT youth issues and offer support and leadership in implementing competent services to the LGBT youth. Programmatic culture. Creating a safe and inclusive environment. Youth participants are keenly aware of their surroundings and often make judgments regarding programs based on the quick assessment of the office structure, visual signs, and culture. Those offering programs should be aware of the appearance of their facility and strive to create an environment of non-judgmental acceptance for LGBT youth participants entering the premises for the first time. To create this environment, agencies should do the following. Create a positive physical environment in the workplace. Display LGBT supportive images such as pink triangles, rainbows, or hate-free safe zone stickers to send a clear message to all the youth and staff that LGBT people are welcome at the agency. Demonstrate knowledge on LGBT youth issues and offer support and leadership in implementing LGBT competent services. Use community outreach material that enforces program practices in welcoming LGBT youth and reassures them there is a safe space for the youth in the facility. Offer materials and accessible services to parents and guardians to learn about sexual orientation and gender identity. Facilitate acceptance of the youth's sexual orientation and gender identity and seek improvements in familiar communications and nurturing behavior. Can adopt and implement written non-discrimination policies. Non-discrimination and anti-harassment policies provide the minimal standard for work with LGBT homeless youth. Having a non-discrimination policy that is widely distributed and fully enforced communicates a basic commitment to creating an LGBT safe environment and also helps make an agency more identifiable as a possible resource for LGBT homeless youth. In order to ensure that LGBT youth participants know that an agency is committed to preventing harassment and discrimination, agencies should do the following. Adopt and implement written policies that prohibit both discrimination and harassment against youth and staff on the basis of their actual or perceived sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, or HIV status. The policy should apply not only to employees but also to contractors and volunteers. Adopt written policies outlining a grievance procedure for LGBT youth and staff to report discrimination, harassment, or abuse, and offer guidance on appropriate responses to discrimination, harassment, or abuse by personnel, youth participants, and volunteers. Ensure that all youth participants, employee, contractors, and volunteers receive notice of the non-discrimination policy, both written and verbal. Let all youth participants know they are expected to treat everyone in accordance with this policy. Provide initial and ongoing professional training on the policy and its application to all employees and volunteers, as well as contract service providers like health and mental health providers, to ensure effective implementation of the non-discrimination policy. Non-discrimination policies can only make a true difference in agency culture if mechanisms are in place for policy implementation and accountability. Periodic self-assessment and updated action plans with input from staff, youth, volunteers, administrators, and other stakeholders can help agencies access overall consistency between policy provisions and agency practice. To give teeth to non-discrimination policies, agencies that serve homeless youth should do the following. Ensure grievance procedures allow for confidential complaints and neutral third-party investigations. Prohibit retaliation against an individual who files a complaint of discrimination or harassment or participates in an investigation of such a complaint. Ensure that supervisory and management staff treat all incidents of discrimination or harassment seriously and follow up promptly by initiating a grievance according to the agency's grievance procedure. Ensure that all youth who access agency services are aware of their rights and are given clear instructions on how to file a complaint of discrimination or harassment. And develop accountability standards that assesses agency staff performance in supporting LGBT youth participants and that track complaints of policy violations. Now, adopt confidentiality policies. When youth disclose their sexual orientation or gender identity to service providers, they are sharing private, sensitive information. Even LGBT people who are out of the closet are generally not out to every person in their lives, even if they have been out for years and are active in LGBT communities. LGBT youth should be able to determine to whom they wish to come out. Agencies should adopt strict policies around managing confidential information about a young person's sexual orientation and gender identity, in addition to other sensitive information like HIV status. Staff should be aware that a misplaced disclosure to a family member who is not ready to digest this information or to a homophobic peer can have deeply negative consequences and may even result in harassment and violence. Agencies offering direct services to LGBT homeless youth should do the following. Adopt written policies regarding the management of information about the youth participant's sexual orientation, gender identity, or HIV status. Ensure that staff do not disclose a youth participant's sexual orientation, gender identity, or HIV status without the young person's permission, unless limited disclosure is required by law to protect a young person's safety. When disclosure is legally required, staff should explain to the youth participant who is entitled to the information and why. Provide LGBT competency training to all agency employees and volunteers. Older adolescents often grow and change in the context of relationships with others. Professional and volunteer staff or community-based organizations are a crucial link between youth participants and the attainment of individual goals. Staff should be trained to ensure ongoing competence and professionalism in serving LGBT homeless youth and to create professionalism among team members. Agencies that serve homeless youth should do the following. Provide initial and ongoing comprehensive LGBT competency training for all staff, including administrators, managers, supervisors, social workers, caseworkers, direct service staff, support staff, facility maintenance personnel, volunteers, and health and mental health providers with whom the agency contracts. Include the following topics in trainings and offer trainings that are tailored to specific service components provided by the agency. A review of vocabulary and definitions relevant to LGBT youth, an exploration of myths and stereotypes regarding LGBT youths and adults, information about how to communicate sensitively with youth about sexuality, sexual orientation, and gender identity, information on developmental issues and adaptive strategies for LGBT children and youth, a review of the coming out process and how adults can support a young person who is coming out, A discussion of how sexual orientation and or gender identity may relate to the reasons a young person is homeless or has ran away, including parents' reactions. A discussion of the social issues and challenges unique to transgender and non-conforming youth